very compelling evidence to show that there are biological roots to eating disorders, that some people might be genetically predisposed to developing an eating disorder, psychological issues related to eating disorders, depression, anxiety, low self-esteem, perfectionism, and there are co-occurring conditions, including addiction. Certainly, the media doesn't cause eating disorders in a simplistic way, but we do live in a culture that glorifies thinness.
Coming to you from Southern California, this is Mindset, mental health news and information. I'm your host, James Curtis. Missouri becomes the first state to expand health insurance to cover eating disorders. My conversation with the woman whose voice you just heard, her name is Claire Misko. She's with an organization called NEDA, N-E-D-A, the National Eating Disorders Association. I also have a conversation with reporter Sam Collins, who covered the story for the online news organization thinkprogress.org. But first, this news from the Mindset Report. The Mindset Report, available online at mindsetreport.com. The Mindset Report, your most comprehensive online source for mental health news. From NPR, National Public Radio, research into how memory works may bring answers for Alzheimer's disease and maybe even for healing emotional trauma. This story from National Public Radio, NPR News' John Hamilton spoke with one of the researchers on the study.
More than a decade ago, scientists discovered that in one area of the brain there are special neurons that respond only to a particular person, like the actress Jennifer Aniston. Matthias Eisen of the University of Leicester in the UK says more recently scientists realized that some of these neurons could respond to two people, but only if those people were connected somehow. First, the team identified neurons that responded to pictures of a specific person. Then, Eisen says, they identified different neurons that responded to pictures of a particular place.
The Eiffel Tower, the Leaning Tower of Pisa, the Hollywood sign, the White House, pictures that people will recognize easily.
Eisen says the next step was to form a new association between a person and a place.
We did that by creating these fake images of, let's say, of Jennifer Aniston at the Eiffel Tower.
When people saw these fake images, it was like running into an old friend at the train station. The experience created a new memory linking the person and the place.
So, old memories get replaced by new memories. Eisen and the other researchers have identified the place where memory activity and associations happen. It's called the medial temporal lobe, and one of the very first places in the brain where changes with the onset of diseases like Alzheimer's show up. Research shows that the same neurons that make associations also make memories. And this from the Des Moines Register as presidential candidate Mike Huckabee gears up for the Iowa primary. He's come under fire from the National Alliance on Mental Illness. On a radio show this past Monday, he's quoted in the Register as saying about U.S. Supreme Court Justice John Roberts, quote, apparently needs medication for schizophrenia. The comment referred to Roberts' allegedly inconsistent opinions in two prominent cases last week. In one case, Justice Roberts dissented from a decision declaring gay marriage legal throughout the country. In another, Roberts wrote a key decision upholding the legality of President Barack Obama's Affordable Care Act. NAMI, the National Alliance on Mental Illness, called the comparison both insulting and inaccurate, noting schizophrenia is not the same as what is commonly referred to as split personality. Rather, 1% of Americans have schizophrenia, which interferes with a person's ability to think clearly, manage their emotions, and make decisions or relate to others. NAMI executive Mary Gilberti also added, quote, as political tactic, Governor Huckabee has exploited the stigma that traditionally has surrounded mental illness. It does not matter whether a person is a Republican, a Democrat, or an independent, she said. To use mental illness as a metaphor to win political advantage does a terrible disservice to those who are diagnosed with this condition and often use medication as part of hard-won journeys to recovery. And finally, this from thinkprogress.org. I spoke with Sam Collins about the Missouri decision, the landmark decision to expand health care coverage for eating disorders. Sam, thanks so much for joining me again. Your latest article, The Expansion of Insurance Coverage for Eating Disorders, comes out of the state of Missouri. Give us the background on that issue in Missouri and that issue overall for that matter.
2 years ago, when Obamacare first came on the scene and we had this big fight in Congress about expanding health care, out of that came the Mental Health Parity Law. And this law, in theory, was supposed to ensure that people received mental health coverage that was on par with their physical health coverage. In years past, it was pretty hard for insurance companies to dole out dollars to cover mental health care. And it just goes to show an ignorance about mental health care issues and just this stigma around the issue in general. So in theory, people who have mental health care issues were supposed to get the same kind of payment they would have gotten if they would have had a physical health care issue. That's only in theory. Now, when it comes to certain illnesses like anorexia, bulimia, overeating, all of those eating disorders, there's a lot of overlap between the mental health care side and the physical health care side. So you see people with those issues still aren't getting the adequate care that they're in need of. And that means that they're getting kicked out of therapy earlier than expected because of the fact that these eating disorders are both mental health care issues and physical health care issues. Once a person overcomes the physical hurdle of gaining their weight back or maintaining a healthy weight, insurance companies that really don't understand that eating disorders are mental as well, they stop paying for that care once it reaches time for psychiatrists or mental health care professionals to get to the root of what was causing that eating disorder. So you see families scrambling to get their dollars and scrambling to find other plans, or even just foregoing care overall, just to not get overburdened with medical costs. And that comes to a detriment of those who have an eating disorder, because once you leave that therapy early, there's a big chance of relapsing. And as families explain with testimonies during the whole legislative process, that has had some catastrophic results, with people dying, with people committing suicide, and other things of that nature, just because they're not getting their mental health care needs addressed.
One of the things that you noted in your article that I found not so much startling, and we hear the background noise. It sounds like some sirens passing you right now. I know you're standing outside. One of the things that I found both refreshing because it's not talked about enough and surprising at the same time, in your article you note that today only 1 in 10 people suffering from a mental disorder receive help, and in that group 35% enter a medical facility and 50% are diagnosed as depressed. And this is in the context of eating disorders that can contribute to muscle loss, weakness, dehydration, and a number of other physical issues that it sounds like the physical issues get addressed, but the mental health issues or psychological issues don't get the same level of care. Is that, am I understanding that correctly?
You definitely are. It all goes back to this shallow understanding of what mental health is and how powerful mental health is. If you look back in the textbook definition of an eating disorder, you would see that eating disorders, whether it's anorexia or bulimia, it often comes out of one thought about him or herself. I'm too fat. I'm too skinny. My body's not like the bodies I see on TV. I want to get this size. Or it's just some unresolved issue about something else that person can't control. And this is the most overlooked, even though it's the most important, it's the most overlooked part of the treatment. Because why fix surface level stuff if the person is just going to keep indulging in that hurtful habit again because we haven't resolved it? So if a person's feeling out of control, if the person's feeling like there's just stuff in their life that's unresolved, why not get them in touch with a mental health care professional who can get them that help and get to the root of that issue to help them change their perspective on everything? That's where it started, and that's where the care should go. Not to say that helping them gain their weight back is not something that we should do. Of course it's something that we should do, But the issue is, and the issue that was at the center of this bill was that oftentimes people just stop there. And the insurance companies were very complicit in it, to the point that they would send independent contractors to go down to these facilities and check out the patient and fill out a rubric in accordance to what the insurance company wanted. So these independent contractors saw that the patient in question reached an attainable weight that the insurance company wanted, then they would suggest that the person be cut off. Without even taking into question the person's mental state, the reasons why the person even took up the eating disorder, they just did surface level things. And in turn, that wastes a lot of money.
Absolutely.
Because people keep coming back and coming back.
Let's revisit that. I want to go over that a little bit more slowly. You're saying that the insurance companies would send individuals to the clinics where individuals who are there for fill in the blank eating disorder, bulimia, anorexia, and explain that again. What would happen?
Sure. So the independent contractors would go in with a rubric that the insurance company outlined. So if the insurance company has in their mind that a person is healthy when they reach this certain weight and they fulfill this criteria, the independent contractor goes in there with that in mind and checks off the list. So if the patient in question meets those requirements, the independent contractor suggests to the insurance company that it's time to cut off coverage, because by the definition that the insurance company outlined, that person is cured of the eating disorder. But what people fail to realize is that the insurance company created those definitions, or may have created those definitions, not out of anything that's medically sound, rather out of a need to save money and to stretch dollars.
Now, do we know anything about these? And I know this was not the focus of your article, so I'm not trying to put you on the spot,
Sure.
But is anything known about these so-called independent contractors hired by the insurance companies? Are they medical professionals? Are they mental health professionals? Because we do know that insurance companies have medical professionals on their staff who review a procedure that, say I go to the doctor, my doctor wants to do ABC procedure, especially if it's not within the average type of treatment. The insurance company is going to take a second look at it and say, well, you need to justify it, or we're not going to cover it because we think it's experimental, that kind of thing. Is this the type of practice, the type of individuals who are these independent contractors, or do we know?
At first, no need to feel like you're putting me on the spot. That's a very good question. And they do bear striking similarity. And to clear up any confusion, these are people who are certified in the medical field, or are so-called certified, according to the article that I read on the subject. These are people who have some certification, who have MD at the end of their name, who are working for the insurance company as independent contractors to see if that person meets the criteria for further insurance coverage. Now, whether or not they have MD on at the end of their name makes no difference, because we often see doctors and insurance companies working side by side to meet the needs of the insurance company. Or just as we see it happening with pharmaceutical companies, paying doctors' ways to conferences and giving them flags like coffee mugs, coffee warmers, pens, and other stuff, so doctors can sort of tout their product. We see that happening often, which is why it's not surprising to me that insurance companies would do stuff like this, enlist doctors to help them carry out their goal of saving money.
Another aspect of your article that, again, took me by surprise was that Missouri is the first state to expand this type of coverage. Did you find that surprising?
I actually did.
What was behind that? How did Missouri end up becoming the first in this area? Any clues as to that?
Sure. I think it's partly just the motivation